Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Public Information and SEPA Scoping Meeting for State Project 92689, the Route 15 Interchange 46 improvements in the City of New Haven and the Town of Woodbridge. My name is Jeff Paffinger. I'm the project manager for this project for the Connecticut Department of Transportation. Before we get into the details of the project, I'd like to go over some housekeeping items because this is a hybrid meeting and we have attendees here in person and also attendees who've joined via Zoom. For those of you who've joined in Zoom, you can turn on the closed captioning by clicking the Show Captions button at the bottom of your screen. Click Speaking Language and select the language you would like from the list shown. We'd like to remind everyone of their civil rights under Title VI. No person shall, on the basis of race, color, or national origin, be excluded from participation or subject to discrimination in the development of this project. We invite you to take a voluntary post-meeting survey that is available at the URL shown on your screen or by scanning the QR code. Additional civil rights information can be found on our Office of Equity's website at the URL shown. Please be aware that this presentation is being recorded and that this recording will be posted to CTDOT's YouTube channel after the event. Closed captioning will also be available on YouTube once the recording is posted. Here's some additional information on Title VI. The Connecticut Department of Transportation operates its programs and services without regard to race, color, and national origin in accordance with Title VI of the Civil Rights Act. Any person who believes she or he has been aggrieved by any lawful discrimination practice under Title VI may file a complaint with the CTDOT. There is additional information on this slide regarding who you can contact and the process to file a complaint should you feel it's warranted. This is that same information in Spanish, so I will just leave this up here for a second for any Spanish speakers that may be in the audience. Following the presentation tonight, we will have a question and answer session. For those of you who are here with us in person, you're welcome to come up to the front when the Q&A session starts to ask your questions. For those of you who joined online, there are 3 ways to submit your comments, and we'll share this slide again following the presentation. The first is through the Q&A function in Zoom. I will describe this process on the following slide. You can also send an email to the address shown on the screen or leave a voicemail at the number also on the screen. We'll be monitoring these throughout the meeting. Please reference the Route 15 project in your message. The public comment period lasts through February 17th. Should you have any additional questions or comments following the meeting? And you can submit those via email or voicemail. And again, we'll provide additional information on this later on in the meeting. Information on how to submit comments can also be found on the project's webpage, which is shown on the slide near the bottom. To submit a comment in Zoom, select the Q&A tool at the bottom of the Zoom window. Q&A window will open as shown on the right of the screen here. Type your question into the text box and hit enter. All right, now that we're through that, we can move on to the project. First off, I'd like to introduce the team from CTDOT. We've got Michael Calabrese, our Division Chief of Highway Design, Sebastian Canamella, Principal Engineer, myself, Jeff Paffinger, Project Manager, Serge Nikulin, Project Engineer, Kevin Fleming, Transportation Supervising Planner from our Office of Environmental Planning, and Zach Guarino, Rights Away Project Coordinator from our Office of Rights Away. Our consultant team on this project is from VHB and Lochner, Bill Anderson, Project Manager, Charles Baker, Senior Traffic Engineer, Aiden Cleaves, Transportation Engineer, Essen Sagir, Project Manager, and Kevin McDyer, Civil Engineer. The purpose of today's meeting is to provide an overview of the project and status update, to obtain public input and respond to any questions or comments that you may have. Many of you live near the project area and drive through it on a daily basis. We'd really like to hear your input so we can make this project successful. Tonight's agenda includes a brief overview of the project and existing conditions, the recommended improvements, overview of the project cost and schedule. And then at the end, we're going to do a question and answer session where you can ask any questions or provide comments about the project. As I mentioned at the beginning, this is a public informational meeting and it's also a SEPA scoping meeting. I'm going to pass this off to Kevin Fleming from our Office of Environmental Planning to describe the SEPA scoping aspect of the project.
All right. Thanks, Jeff. Hey, everyone. Thanks for joining us tonight in person and then also online. My name is Kevin Fleming, and I'm a transportation planner at DOT in the Office of Environmental Planning. And as Jeff mentioned, we're here tonight for a public informational / SEPA scoping meeting. So I'll briefly just go over what SEPA is and then also what's meant by the term scoping as it relates specifically to SEPA. So SEPA stands for the Connecticut Environmental Policy Act, and it provides a standardized public process for the various Connecticut state agencies to follow for reviewing state actions that may have an effect on the environment. And since it is a public process, one of the most important components of SEPA is your opportunity to review a proposed state project and give us your feedback. So your comments here tonight and throughout the entire public comment period are a critical part of the overall SEPA review process and helps us make informed decisions. And as you can see here on the screen, under SEPA, we have to consider the impacts that the project may have on a really wide range of environmental resources. And although this isn't necessarily an all-encompassing list, it should give you a pretty good idea of the types of resources that we do have to consider under the Connecticut Environmental Policy Act. Everything from impacts to cultural resources and parkland to endangered species and air quality. And actually, in the case of this project, because it does involve funding through the Federal Highway Administration, or FHWA, we have to ensure compliance with the National Environmental Policy Act, or NEPA, as well. So now that you have just a very high level, basic general idea of what SEPA is and the resources that we do need to consider under it, what exactly is meant by the term scoping? Well, under SEPA, the term scoping is a very specific definition, and the process involves a defined set of steps for public outreach. The official definition is shown here on the screen, but ultimately it's just basically a way for us to get information from the public, the affected municipalities, and the other state agencies so we can determine the proper level of environmental review and documentation required for a project. Now, this process begins when we publish a notice of the project in something called the Environmental Monitor, and that kicks off the public comment period for the project. Now, for those of you who aren't necessarily familiar with what the Environmental Monitor is, I know I certainly wasn't before I started working at the DOT. It's an online publication run by the Connecticut Council on Environmental Quality. It informs the public of all the state actions that go through the SEPA scoping process. So it's like a SEPA clearinghouse of sorts. And for this project, we published that scoping notice back on January 20th to kick off the process. Now, obviously, as you know, often the local community has a really unique understanding of the project area, not only just an understanding of the resources in the area, but also an understanding of any community concerns or issues that we just might not be aware of. So the information you provide here tonight and during the entire scoping phase is just really valuable in helping us make informed decisions on the project. And then ultimately, this process will help us determine if there are any significant environmental impacts associated with the project, and therefore the need to undertake a formal environmental impact evaluation, or an EIE. An EIE is a detailed and comprehensive document that identifies any significant environmental impacts and compares the impacts of any alternatives being considered for the project. So here is just a really high-level chart of the overall SEPA process. It shows where we are currently, and those are the boxes outlined in red at the top there. And then it also shows what the next steps are under the SEPA process. So moving forward, once the scoping period ends, we'll just go ahead and review all the comments we received, consider any environmental impacts, and then based on that information, we'll determine if an EIE is needed or not. And then once that determination is made, That decision itself and the justification behind it will be published in the Environmental Monitor, along with a synopsis of the comments we received throughout the entire scoping process and our responses to those comments. And then ultimately, this will inform the public that we have either A, concluded the SEPA process, or B, that we'll be doing further analysis in the form of an EIE due to the presence of significant environmental impacts. So obviously that was really, high level, but I just want to thank you all for your time, and we look forward to your comments. And now hand the presentation back over to Jeff.
All right, thank you, Kevin. I'm just going to all right, let me give a quick project overview. Limits of project 92,689 include just under a mile of Route 15 in the vicinity of Interchange 46, including the entrance and exit ramps. Beginning approximately a quarter mile southwest of the bridge carrying Route 15 over Route 63 and extending northeasterly to the opening of the Heroes Tunnel. Work on Route 69 is generally limited to the area in the vicinity of the northbound entrance and exit ramps. And the work on Route 63 is generally limited to the area in the vicinity of the southbound ramps and in the area of the bridge carrying Route 15 over Route 63. The purpose of the project is to provide safety, mobility, connectivity improvements on Route 15 at Interchange 46 and the immediate subnetwork of connections with Route 69 and Route 63. This project was initiated to address substandard entrance and exit ramps, acceleration and deceleration lane distances, improve geometric conditions to reduce the number of crashes, and improve access to and from Route 15 to the subnetwork. Here's some examples of the existing conditions that we're trying to address under the project. Shown below on the left is a picture of the existing southbound off-ramp. The ramp splits off from the Route 15 main line directly into a 20-mile-an-hour curve. In order to safely navigate that curve, motorists need to start slowing down while still in the right lane of the Route 15 main line. Vehicles braking in mainline traffic cause congestion on Route 15 and can result in safety concerns when vehicles brake unexpectedly or quickly change lanes to avoid vehicles that are slowing down to exit onto the southbound off-ramp. Also shown on this slide is a picture of the existing stop-controlled southbound on-ramp. This results in similar congestion and safety concerns caused by motorists on the ramp not being able to accelerate up to expressway speeds before merging into mainline traffic. The gap in traffic required to merge into the main line from this stop condition is much larger than it would be if the on-ramp traffic was able to speed up to expressway speeds before needing to merge in with the traffic on the main line. Though not as pronounced, similar conditions exist at the northbound ramps. The off-ramp splits off the main line into a 25-mile-an-hour curve, requiring, again, motorists to begin braking while they're still in mainline traffic. And the on-ramp does not allow motorists to accelerate up to expressway speeds prior to the merge point. There's also limited space to extend the acceleration lane on the northbound side due to its proximity to the Heroes Tunnel entrance. To discuss proposed improvements to address the conditions that I just described, I'm going to pass this out to our consultant team, led by Bill Anderson at VHB.
All right, thank you, Jeff. Again, my name is Bill Anderson. I'm the project manager with VHB for this project, and here are my consultant team. All right, so to address the needs identified by Jeff, we're proposing 5 major improvements for this project. The first is to provide acceleration and deceleration lanes that meet design standards. The second is to add a loop ramp from Route 69 to connect to Route 50 northbound and in turn closing the Pondley Avenue ramp. The third is to replace the bridge over Route 63 to facilitate the construction of the southbound on-ramp and northbound off-ramp. The fourth is to replace the superstructure on the bridge over Route 69 and the West River to facilitate the northbound on-ramp and southbound off-ramp and deceleration lane. The fifth is for us to add lanes to turn lanes to Route 69 to provide dedicated left turn lanes from northbound 69 onto the new loop ramp and a dedicated right turn lane from southbound 69 onto the loop ramp. So let's just start at the existing southbound off ramp. As Jeff described, the difficulty for if there's not a designated deceleration lane, vehicles in the right lane would tend to slow down or change lane for the potential of slowing traffic or increasing or potential for accidents. So that's what's shown on the top left-hand corner here. On the right side, what you're looking at here is a 3D rendering of the proposed condition. So as starting from left, you can see two through lanes. So those the white car and the red car, those are two through lanes. And to the right, you'll see a designated deceleration lane for vehicles that wish to exit Route 15, which makes for a safer condition. The next location, as Jeff described, is stop control at the southbound on-ramp to Route 15. Again, the difficulty if you drive this location, knowing how hard it is to get onto the main line, trying to get up to speed to the mainline traffic. What we'll provide is designated deceleration lanes. So where you have the Route 63 ramp and the Route 69 ramp merge would provide enough room for those traffic from both ramps to merge, and then enough room for the vehicles to get up to the speed of the Route 15 main line, then merge onto Route 15. And that's what's shown here on the right side, top right side of the screen. Looking at the northbound off-ramp, you'll see just in the distance the ramp exit, which is basically get off the main line into a curve and then down to Route 69. So what we're looking to provide is just on the right side there, we have two through lanes and then a designated deceleration lane, which allows the vehicles exiting to get down to speed and then navigate the ramp. The next location shows on the top left is the existing Pondley ramp. There is some acceleration distance provided, but that does not meet the design standard. So what we're looking to do here, again, we're adding a new loop ramp, getting rid of the Pondley ramp, and then providing enough acceleration distance for vehicles to get up to speed before merging onto the Route 15 main line. So what you're seeing here is an aerial 3D rendering of the proposed improvements. As you can see in the distance at the top of the page is the Eros Tunnel. The bottom right corner shows the northbound off-ramp, and then we can see two through lanes and then a northbound deceleration lane. Just to the top of that, you can see the loop ramp, which again, we're providing an acceleration lane, and then just with enough distance and space for vehicles to merge onto Route 15 northbound. On the left side of that, heading south, you will see the designated deceleration lane, and then that merges into the loop ramp that connects to Route 69. And again, the bottom left of your screen there, you can see where both the ramp from Route 63 and Route 69, they merge together, and then we provide enough distance for those the ramps that actually merge together to get up to speed and able to merge onto Route 15. This is just another view that shows an aerial rendering that shows looking southbound. Again, what we're showing here is to the bottom of your screen on the right side, it's the southbound off-ramp. We're providing two through lanes, but a designated deceleration lane for vehicles exiting off Route 15 southbound onto the ramp to Route 69. Then another side, still on the right, you'll see where Route 63 ramp and Route 69 ramp, southbound ramp merges, and then they have the ability to actually get up to speed before merging onto Route 15 southbound. The top left side shows where the northbound off-ramp exit at Route 69. So to the farthest left there, you'll see Route 69. We're providing double left turn lanes for vehicles to turn, make a left onto the northbound loop ramp. We're also providing in the southbound direction a designated right lane for vehicles to make the right onto that loop ramp, and then provide enough acceleration length for those vehicles to get up to speed to merge onto the Route 15. So this is just a graphical illustration, just taking a look at the three intersections within the project limits on Route 69 and how the comparing the pre-construction, post-construction conditions. So starting with the southbound off-ramp location, southbound off and on-ramp location, as you can see here, there's really no change between the proposed and the existing. Both conditions are the same in terms of the traffic pattern. It remains the same in the pre and post construction condition. Same it is for the northbound off-ramp in the existing condition and the proposed condition. Even though we will be reconstructing the northbound off-ramp, the traffic pattern will not change in the final build-out. The big change that you will see is at the Pond Lily Avenue intersection with Route 69. So today, if you're trying to exit to get to northbound Route 15, say for example, if you're heading south on Route 69, you're able to make a left onto Pond Lily Avenue and then hang a left onto the northbound Pond Lily loop ramp to Route 15 northbound. If you're heading north on Route 69, you're able to make a right and then head north on the Route 15 northbound ramp. In the proposed condition, as of today, you're not allowed to make a left out of Pond Lily Avenue. In the proposed condition, we'll allow a left out of Pond Lily Avenue. So for vehicles looking to go northbound, if you're on Pond Lily Avenue, you can actually make a left and then hang a right onto the new loop ramp. For southbound, Route 69, we'll be providing a designated right turn lane. So vehicles heading south on Route 69, just to make it easier for them to be able to access that new loop ramp. And then if you're heading north on Route 69, we're providing two left turn lanes to head north onto the new loop ramp. Another change, sure. Oh, up top? Oh, I see.
Yeah, there's actually any of them
What if it's
showing up here.
what if like in the middle of the implementation, I'm not confident to do everything. So we have to keep it. We need to choice. Maybe that's the organic recommendation range.
This one?
Duplicate search and figure things. No, it's not.
No, that's all good. Appreciate it. We good with the display? Yeah, it's apparently outside of my technical.
Well, let me just
My
read
apologies.
I'll read the heading for you, right? So this is the This is the Pond Lily access to southbound Route 69, essentially what we're describing here. And again, under existing condition, if you're trying to head south on Route 69 from Pond Lily Avenue, more than likely you're going to head onto Valley Street and then turn onto East Ramsdale Street to head south onto Route 69. Under the proposed condition, with us allowing left turns out of Pond Lily Avenue onto Route 69, that access is much easier. This is a direct left turn onto Route 69 from Pond Lily Avenue. So in terms of the summarizing the impacts of these improvements, the ramp modification will improve local traffic patterns. It'll be more convenient to access to south from Route 69 south from Pond Lily Avenue. And we anticipate a reduction in traffic on Valley Street and the surrounding neighborhood streets. So what to expect during construction in terms of lane closures and any change in traffic pattern. So let's begin with Route 15, on Route 15. So during your normal peak hours, which is 6 a.m. to 6 p.m., we anticipate providing 2 lanes of traffic in each direction, as there is out there today. We anticipate during nighttime work, there will be some lane closures. So this is between, say, maybe 7 p.m. and 5 a.m., there will be some lane closures. On the ramps, during your peak hours, which is 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. and then 3 to 6 p.m., essentially we expect the ramps to remain open. During nighttime work, there might be some temporary lane closures on the ramps. On Route 69, during your peak hours, which is 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. and then 3 to 6 p.m., we anticipate traffic as it is out there today. During the work hours, we'll be requiring the contractor to maintain at least 1 lane in each direction. The limitations of operation noted for Route 69 will be the same for all the other local roadways, including Pond Lily Avenue. The contractor will be required to maintain access to commercial and residential driveways during construction. If for any reason the contractor needs to temporarily close a driveway, he or she will be required to coordinate with the property owner. So here's what I think is a basic illustration of the traffic pattern on Route 15 during construction. So again, during your normal peak hours or anytime peak hours, what we anticipate is providing 2 lanes in each direction. The orange areas shaded in, that would be work areas. So essentially what they would do is shift traffic over to the left, heading south, to the right, heading south, and then do the work in the right shoulder that we heading north. For the next phase, the area that was previously built on was built on the previous phase. The northbound traffic will be placed on that section, maintaining the southbound traffic on the existing pavement section, and then doing work within the middle of the roadway. The next phase will be essentially maintaining the northbound traffic as is, and then shifting the southbound traffic in the new construction section from the previous phase, and then doing work on the western portion of the roadway. All right, the next phase essentially, again, shifting traffic around, and then for the first phase, we were looking to build some temporary pavement. So this phase shows essentially shifting traffic to provide still 2 lanes in each direction, and then the final construction in the right shoulder is heading north to, removing the temporary pavement and any final construction required. All right, so this project will have some right-of-way impact. One total acquisition has been identified so far. So this is at the Sunoco gas station at the intersection of the northbound off-ramp and Route 69. We have also identified 2 partial acquisitions. 6 drainage right-of-way will be required. We also require 6 right to reconstruct parking lots and driveway, and this will be along Route 69 area. And then we have one easement for grading required along Route 69. All right. I'll turn over to Zach for him to go over the right-of-way process.
Thanks, Bill. So good. My name is Zach Carino from the Department's Division of Rights of Way. Our unit is responsible for acquiring the property rights that are needed for the project. As Bill mentioned, several property rights will be acquired, so I'll be giving a brief overview of our acquisition process and what you can expect from the department if you're one of the impacted property owners. So all the property acquisitions will be in accordance with Connecticut General Statute, sections 13A73 and 13A90E, as well as the Uniform Act. So the acquisition process, we're going to be meeting with each of the impacted property owners. In the case of the Sunoco gas station, we've already met with them. We'll be going over the project and explain the impacts of the property. We'll also be preparing a property map, which will show the property rights that we're proposing to acquire. We'll begin negotiations with the property owner, give them time to consider our offer. If we can come to an agreement, then the department will pay the property owner directly and will handle the closing. And if we're unable to come to an agreement, then the department will acquire the property rights through its power of eminent domain and deposit the original offer amount into the court system. And the owner would have 6 months from that date to file an appeal if they felt that the offer was inadequate. So these impacts are still subject to change as the design progresses. And if there's any questions regarding the right-of-way acquisition process, or if you are one of the impacted property owners, we can answer questions in the Q&A. With that, I'm going to hand it back over to Jeff. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Zach. All right. There are various environmental permits that are going to be required due to the work occurring in the proximity of the West River. During the final design phase, we will be working closely with the applicable regulatory agencies to ensure compliance with all environmental permitting requirements as the project is further developed. The current cost estimate based on the preliminary design is approximately $90 million, with 80% of that funding coming from Federal Highway Administration and 20% of that coming from the state of Connecticut. And then for a project schedule, we completed the preliminary design last summer. We are looking to begin final design, the permitting and rights-of-way coordination starting in the spring of this year, with a design completion date targeted in the fall of 2027, which would result in a construction start in the spring of 2028. And we are expecting a construction duration of approximately 3 years. That concludes the presentation. We're going to be moving on to the question and answer portion of tonight's meeting. As a reminder, shown on the screen, there are various ways that our online participants can submit questions or comments. If any of our in-person participants have any comments or questions, please feel free to come up to the podium and you can ask them from up here. All right.
I have several. My name is Frank Hoffman. I am a resident of New Haven and one of the people who has been involved in the West River Watershed Coalition for many years. And I'm just saying, I think this was the first of the various what I call intersection problems that we have in addressing a trail that we hope to go all the way through this area and up to the Water Authority land company. Obviously, it's one where there are a lot of things going on in the same place. Specific concerns about this. One of them actually has to do with stormwater. And I realize that's going to be in the future with the deep and all of that. That's fine. My inspection of this area, I walked around it quite a bit, suggests that you're going to need to have a detention basin to somewhere in this site, and that area that's kind of in the middle of the loops and parts seem to me to be available for that purpose. There's an existing old culvert that runs into the West River, and it could probably stand to be substantially improved. But I think the location may be fairly good. The adjacent Pond Lily Preserve, which is an asset of the land trust, by the way, I keep losing names. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
In the name of land trust, there, that actually could be divided so that part of it became a detention basin, and the rest would be for the regular flow of the river. There have been flooding concerns, particularly on the Woodbridge side, and anything to improve the capacity of the river to handle more would be greatly appreciated. My only other comment has to do with pedestrian access and question whether you look at possibility of putting a bike lane along Route 69. Right now, there is, I think I've heard from my friends in Woodbridge, there's literally no good way for a bicyclist who wants to commute into New Haven or to Woodbridge from Ridley to do that. So I'm likely to take a close look at that question as we're going forward, along not particularly a bike person, and maybe others who have in the front of us.
All right, thank you. So I'm just going to try to repeat this. I'm not sure how well anybody online heard that. It was kind of a three-part question, all related to the West River. The first one was addressing a potential trail that is eventually going to run up to some, what was it, a water reservoir or something in Bethany? Water Authority land in Bethany. New Haven City Engineer did mention that this was a possibility to us when we were doing some coordination with them a couple of months ago. And, sort of where we ended up with that was, the space under the bridge was the constraining factor under the bridge carrying Route 15 over Route 69. And we're not really changing any of the real estate underneath that. There's no widening to Route 69 that's happening underneath that bridge. So it doesn't seem like anything that we are doing is going to preclude that path from getting through there in the future. We're not planning on accommodating, so to speak, but we're not reducing the space under the bridge, which really did seem like it was the biggest constraint as far as like providing that facility. Second question was regarding stormwater management and potential detention basins to treat the water before it makes its way into the West River. We are still working on our drainage design. We are considering, all the best management practices that we can in order to better handle the stormwater in the area. We do know about some flooding concerns, and also just, trying to do some pre-treating before it gets in there instead of directly connecting. We haven't really identified anything yet because, like I said, we are still working on the drainage design, but that is something that we are going to give consideration to as we develop the drainage design and continue our way through final design. And then the third part had to do with a bike lane on Route 69. So I know the town of Woodbridge does have a project in the works to provide a bicycle facility on Route 63. I don't know that we really considered a path running along Route 69 under the project. But yeah, the city of Woodbridge has a project that is going to be department funded. They're administering it. That's going to provide a facility along Route 63, ending essentially at the southbound on-ramp across the street from, I believe it's a Stop and Shop. And there's like a bank there as well. And then the town line is essentially like right there. We are replacing that bridge carrying Route 63 over Route 15 over Route 63 as part of the project. And we are providing enough space under the new structure so that any extension of that path in the future could be accommodated. And I think it's sort of the flip on Route 69 where, sort of once you get into Woodbridge, you're really constrained on space. And, if we were to provide something within our project area on Route 69, I think that there would be some issues with extending that up through Woodbridge. So, in coordination with the town, knowing that they have the project, we are doing the best that we can to accommodate a future facility on the New Haven side on Route 63. But we have not, aside from putting in wider shoulders on Route 69 on the New Haven side in our project area, that is the extent of the accommodations that we're providing for bicycles on that side. Is there anything you'd like to add to that, Bill? Yeah. Any other questions, comments from the? Yeah.
We're doing it in town fair, and it's called the Westfield Greenway Fair.
Mhm.
And right under the parkway there, there's some of that methods, but yeah, but right, yeah, we get into all the way from into the park, and it's all completed. We're working on this with Conference Governors. And right at the point that some tough really boulders were put over there. That's not skipping out, so we see that fair was there. It was completed. Going right into the- this right under Litchfield and Conference.
Yeah,
Right underneath it. So they're building a new bridge here?
we are widening it, but the footprint is staying the same.
All right,
So we're not taking any width away, but we
Oh.
are.
along the side of the river there. That's where I feel for those who feel it makes it. And we have to make some connections with the young place. And then from there, we can go on. It was this thing, we're actually, right now, then there's the rest of the field, and then I think it's on. The trail. So that's a really important section right there. Yeah. The other issue we had was, there was a lot of drainage problems from the past that, from around the tunnel and over the tunnel. And some of those were corrected. The last person we talked to, from Pete was probably in 2016. And there was a catch basin alongside the tunnel. It took all the water from the top of the tunnel, the bottom, the top of the bridge. And there was a 22-inch pipe that went out along the side of the parkway and ended up in the West River. And let's talk about some better filtration where that pipe went to the West River. Probably not part of this project because it goes on, it comes from the tunnel mostly.
Yep.
But some of that water drains off of each side of the highway also. So we'd appreciate it to really look at that. And whatever filtration system we can get is a great help, because some of the houses down there were being flooded. And it was confirmed by a study that the town had done. And we need to look at that study still.
Yeah, and could you please submit that? Like I left an email address and a voicemail.
Yeah.
We can talk further about that.
Sure. Just so you know that we're concerned about it. Some of the houses we get flooded. And there's,
Yep.
a lot of issues in that area, pretty well lined area by the river to start off with, and then with the water come off the ridge.
Yep.
With everybody. Thank you very much for your time.
All right. So again, for the people online, I'm not sure if that came through the microphone, so I'm just going to sort of repeat the concerns that were just pushed towards us. One of them was, again, another comment about the bike path and sort of showing a path of how it's supposed to cross underneath on Route 69, underneath Route 15. And again, we're not really precluding that path. We were informed by the city of New Haven that, this was something that was getting worked on. So the other question was about drainage coming off of Route 15 and out of the tunnel and potentially flooding properties in Woodbridge. And again, we are making some improvements to the drainage on Route 15 and are looking at some best management practices to better handle the drainage that we're discharging off of the highway. So, we're going to continue that effort in the final design as the drainage design progresses. Yes, we do have a couple of questions from the online folks that I'm going to get to now. So the first question was, how will this project overlap with the Heroes Tunnel project? Two sort of major initiatives the department has going on simultaneously. We are coordinating very closely with the Heroes Tunnel project, but the short answer is, we're not really sure how these are going to overlap at this point. We know that we can't really construct the two simultaneously without the two contractors really conflicting with each other. So, we're working with the Heroes Tunnel project, they're working with us, and really the best answer I have for that right now is that's still to be determined. But we are working through the best way to construct it to, hopefully minimize the impacts to the traveling public with the two projects going on simultaneously. Next online question. How will the need to expand Route 15 to enable acceleration and deceleration lanes affect the adjacent property owners as well as environmental consideration? Yeah, do you want this one? Yeah, I mean, so the acceleration and deceleration lanes are being built almost entirely in the DOT right away. I believe that there are some impacts that are mostly related. There's south of the Route 63 bridge, sort of reestablishing some existing drainage channels that are in that area. But north of the bridge, we are constructing that all on the Heroes Tunnel side within the existing state right away. And I don't believe there were really any environmental impacts in that area. Most of that was down on Route 69, but yes, it does not appear at this time that there are considerable impacts to the adjacent property owners, particularly environmental impacts due to the widening for the acceleration and deceleration lanes. All right, the next online question. As the West River is a state designated greenway, it tends to be very closely scrutinized under any SEPA scoping analysis in terms of access. Kevin, do you have anything to add to that? Yeah, it needs to be very closely scrutinized under any SEPA scoping analysis in terms of access.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So Kevin from our environmental planning office is here, is coordinating the SEPA scoping. He said that the SEPA scoping is still, the public comment period is still ongoing. So any comments that come in will get, scrutinized through the normal process. But yes, that scoping process is still underway. So comments are still being submitted. Next online question is again regarding the timing and how the construction timing and how that will interact with the Heroes Tunnel project. As I mentioned, the department is well aware of the two projects going on. There's a lot of coordination going on But yeah, we need to work very closely with that project to figure out the best way to sequence the two projects. Whether that is potentially even combining them into one construction project to limit the number of contractors. But yeah, we're still trying to determine the best way to sequence the projects together with the Heroes Tunnel project. The next online question. Route 69 traffic currently has 3 lanes before the Route 69 bridge and 2 lanes under and after the bridge. You indicated that only 1 lane will remain open during construction. This is significant, particularly during rush hour, and can result in significant delays. Have you considered other options? So when we mentioned that 1 lane will remain open during construction, we were sort of talking about the through lanes. And we do consider the turning lanes as well. But yeah, the slide that Bill was talking about, it was 1 through lane on say Route 69 is going to remain open during construction. Which is what exists today. It's just 1 through lane, and a handful of different turn lanes for the ramps. But as we're working through our sequencing, there are traffic analyses that go into it that we're going to need to consider in the closing of lanes. Have we considered other options? Yes, and we are continuing to work on the management of traffic plans during construction. And my traffic expert is here, so he's going to tell me how I just did on that one. Yeah, we are still working on the maintenance protections traffic plans. But yes, that 1 lane, what we were trying to convey there was we're not going to be taking away through lanes either on Route 15 or Route 69 during construction. All right, online question. Since the bike lane has come up twice, you said the plans do not change the clearance under the bridge. Why not consider making the bike lane safe and spacious enough for safety part of the plan? So I mentioned that we're not changing it's the horizontal clearance under the bridge. The curb line of Route 69 underneath the Route 15 bridge isn't changing. The work that we're doing on that bridge is just widening the top side. So we're not changing any of the horizontal clearances under the bridge, which I believe is still going to leave plenty of space underneath to add the trail in a future date. Yes, this has come up a few times. This was brought up in our previous coordination. And it is our goal of the project to not impact the space that's currently available for that trail to get underneath the bridge. The next question. There are many individuals using the bridges in adjacent area for building tents and taking shelter. Is the department considering to create such designs to minimize building such tents? This being a transportation project, I would say that eliminating space for people that are using the bridges for shelter is not necessarily the goal of the project. Prior to construction, we will be providing alternative housing or relocating people that would be in conflict with construction of the project. We are aware that that is an issue down there. There is also going to be some brush that's cleared out as part of the project, just related to the relocation of the curb lines on Route 69, the widening of the bridge that's carrying Route 15 over Route 69, which may make that a little bit less desirable, I'd say, because it will end up being a little bit clearer in the after portion. But yeah, I mean, pre-project, we do address the people that shelter under the bridges to, essentially remove them prior to construction. All right, as of now, that is, oops, one more.
Yeah, no, my question surrounds the event on January 14th, which was a DOT conducted encampment sweep of people making home under the bridge off of Whaley Avenue over under Route 15. My question first off is who ordered the sweep, and especially then after the sweep, the workers put gigantic boulders that they could have only lifted using their the bobcat that they were using to conduct the sweep. And it seems as if the boulders themselves were imported in. So I'm also curious who ordered the boulder placement as well. I also want to ask, how does that fit into DOT policy of their sweep conduction? And then I'm also really curious, especially with the SEPA, the Connecticut Environmental Policy Act. Yeah, how does the rights of the unhoused folks living there, these were people living there, you could make arguments that their public health was violated, their recreation resources, and their land use. Like, how are those taken into consideration in this project? Especially since their voices have already been displaced and violated in this project. So kind of like a four-part question.
The January 14th sweeping event, I had zero previous knowledge of. I don't know who in the department made that decision or how it was carried out. We are designing an interchange project and have absolutely nothing to do with whatever that was. I think that there are some other offices at the department that you could pose those questions at that would be better able to answer them. Our customer care center is kind of the general place to send in questions, and they distribute them out to the appropriate units to I had zero previous knowledge of that. You could find information about their contact on our website, or after the meeting, I could help you find it on the website if that would be more helpful. And like I said, we're not going to be doing anything under this project that is going to specifically address any of those issues. Our goal is to make sure that the contractor has a safe space to work. So the department does go in ahead of our projects and find alternative places for people to stay. Whether or not they take us up on it. Again, not an operation that I've ever been involved in before, but the goal of the project is to give the contractor a safe space to work and not specifically preclude anything like that from happening in the future.
So especially under the socioeconomic issues of the people review, would the way that unhoused people are using land or just their voice would be taken into consideration? Specifically?
Absolutely, certainly, yeah. So socioeconomics.
Because it did happen on a day that Governor Lamont had initiated a closed limit for was replacing with wildlife.
I was going to say, certainly, we're submitting.
And is there a different process for the SEPA scoping, or is that something that we can collect and hand off to you?
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
So the equal was not collected as part of the process. It just seems like when I was learning about this anyway. If we can find. So,
Certainly something,
and so I think so much and this project is so one thing physically I don't know so maybe the ground field and so you take physically out of the field but nothing to do.
All right, for the online people who didn't hear the responses to that, we just provided some additional information about the SEPA scoping and encouraged comments to be submitted for those socioeconomic concerns. Did get another online question. In addition to the Heroes Tunnel project, there's also a LOTSA project along Route 63. Will you also consider that project as you determine the overall scheduling of all of these projects? Yes, we will. I was at the Heroes Tunnel public info meeting a few weeks ago and had a conversation with the first selectman from Woodbridge about all three of these projects essentially having a similar schedule. At that meeting, I did tell him that we would be coordinating further to figure out the best way to sequence all three of these projects to make sure that there were no conflicts with contractors and just generally trying to figure out the best way to do all of that work simultaneously, sequenced, or however that ends up being. But yes, we are going to coordinate further with the town of Woodbridge regarding that trail project in our LOTSA program. Online question. Will the timing of the light at the head of Pond Lily be changed due to less New Haven bound traffic turning left to go northbound on Route 15? Yes, it will. All of the signals in the corridor are going to get retimed based on traffic pattern changes anticipated under our project. So yes, everything is going to get retimed as part of the project. Online question, how long is the acceleration lane at the southbound entrance?
It's about 1,700 feet.
It is about 1,700 feet, which I believe based on our guidance, the speeds of the highway and the grade, it is uphill for vehicles accelerating on Route 15. I believe that is just straight out of our book based on those three factors. With that, I am out of questions for the time being. If there's anybody online who'd like to submit something, please get that in. If anybody thinks of any questions or comments they'd like to submit after the meeting, there is information on our website, which is shown on the screen right now, for how to submit comments after the meeting. It will be to the email address at the top of the screen, which is my DOT email address. People can also submit them by phone. This is not the correct number. This is the number we're just using for this meeting. But it is 594-2767, excuse me. 594-2767. People can call and leave comments if they prefer to do that instead of an email. The Q&A from the Zoom session will not be available after the meeting's done. So please submit your comments either via the email or by leaving a voicemail at 594-2767. And with that, I believe that we are going to conclude this meeting. Thank you, everybody, for joining. Again, please submit any comments that you may have after the meeting. And I hope everybody has a good night. Thank you.